How does it feel to have a conversation like we're going to have openly?
I think it feels empowering in a sense. It's not really a sort of topic that you can speak openly about with everyone because not everyone has the same experience as you do. So I think having the space to talk about this is very empowering.
What do you remember about the first time things started changing for you, and what did it feel like?
I think the first time I remember I was really confused. I didn't realize that the impact that it had on me at the time. I think I was just more sort of in shock. Although I was taught a lot about it, when you're in that position, you don't really know how to navigate the situation as much. I got it on a random school trip, and at the time I didn't really know what it was. So I kind of just forgot about it in a sense, and then I went home and then I realized that it happened again. So I kind of spoke to my mum about it and she told me, oh, you've started your period. And at the time, I think I just started crying because I knew the responsibility I had, especially as a Muslimah. That's the time that you need to start covering. You'll be accountable for your prayers and things like that. And also just a slight pain as well, pain that I've never really felt in my body. So I didn't really know how to sort of go about my day, but I knew it was something that everyone else went through, every woman went through. So it wasn't something that I felt like I could continuously bring up. I used to go to Arabic school and my friendship group there. I kind of was the first one to have my period then. So they didn't really understand, but they were kind of like, oh, you've got your period. They kind of saw it as like, you're so lucky because it's a sign of womanhood. But in that sense, I didn't really feel the luckiness in a way. I kind of wanted to go back to pre-period, essentially, because I just thought it was a very uncomfortable stage. That responsibility I knew I had, it kind of stressed me out a little bit, especially when you're not ready to perhaps put on the hijab and start covering. You're kind of like, oh, what am I going to do? I know I have to do it, but do I feel ready to do it? I think in difficult times, I really wanted to pray, really wanted to fast. But I think just having the prayer times in mind and knowing that I should still keep up with, morning and evening adhkar, and, when it's prayer time, you can still make dua. I think the most uncomfortable thing is when you're going through a tough stage in life or position or just situation and you just want to kind of talk to Allah, but you're not really able to because there's no closeness in terms of salah. But I think as years went on, I came to realize that the closeness and the connection that you feel with Allah is not necessarily by physical actions. It can be spiritual. It can just be listening to the Quran perhaps. So I think just adjusting to that and lowering my expectations in a sense. I would say always have a plan. Don't give up. Don't just kind of take this as a holiday. Still keep up with certain things in your deen. So, listen to the Quran if you can't read it. Still keep up with your adhkar and your du'as and listen to a lecture. And I find that when you don't implement any of those things and you kind of just go perhaps 7 days straight without doing anything, that's when you really notice your īmān drops. And that's especially the time when you're already emotional and things affect you far more worse than it did before.
When did you realize something might not be right?
I remember one time one of my friends told me, Safiyyah, I always know when you're on your period. And I was like, why? And she was like, because you're never in. And at the time, I kind of just laughed it off because I thought, it's normal, everyone goes through it. But as years went on, and the symptoms that I had were not normal and the people around me didn't experience that, I noticed that there was an issue there. And there was also a stress of knowing like a few days beforehand, cancelling plans, or I'm not able to go to, for example, a school trip because I know I'm going to start my period on that day and, I don't want to risk nausea, vomiting, hot, cold sweats, things like that. And in terms of school and work, especially when I started working, is when I noticed how many days off I was taking, or I'd go to work and I'd kind of flare up and have to go straight home. One time I was doing some holiday shopping. A few days before, I was in Westfield doing some holiday shopping, and out of nowhere, I just kind of had this really intense pain in my back and my stomach, and I had hot and cold sweats. I was drenched, and I remember I was queuing up and I just couldn't stand up. I had to sit down on the floor and kind of drag myself, and that's when I knew something was up. And then I kind of went to the toilet, realized that I'd started my period, and I physically couldn't go home by myself. I had to call my sister to come and pick me up because I was just in so much pain.
And when you sought support for your symptoms, what happened next?
They honestly kind of dismissed it. When you go to the GP, they kind of say this is normal, this is what all women go through, and they kind of push the narrative of, taking contraception, when contraception only masks the symptoms. It doesn't necessarily heal it or fix the root cause. They kind of push for, internal ultrasounds and things like that. And as a Muslim woman, you're not necessarily comfortable with that. So I think there's not many options out there or much support. So the process is kind of going back to the GP to see if I can get more testing done or be put on the waiting list for laparoscopy, or perhaps just trying to go private and sort this issue out. Growing up, you're not necessarily taught to, speak of, your period and things in front of male family members or things like that. It's not really something you want to always be talking about, because I feel like not many people want to hear it, especially if they don't go through something like that. They can undermine your symptoms, or they just say, oh, it's just a period, take a tablet, or we can still go, or let's still do this, or you can go home early. And it kind of makes you a bit closed off in a sense, and you kind of feel perhaps maybe like a party pooper because you can't go to a certain outing because you're due your period in a day or 2 days, and you just don't want to risk it.
And if you could go back and speak to your younger self, what would you tell her about her cycle and her relationship with worship?
I think I would tell her that it's okay. A lot of women experience what you're experiencing. In a way, it's a healing from Allah as well, because when you're in pain, you get rewards for it, and that there is support out there. Just don't give up. You need to advocate for yourself, because if you don't, no one else will. You're the one that goes through this every month. And also just research as much as you can what could flare you up, and cut out certain things, try an anti-inflammatory diet or things like that. Just research as much as you can and see, trial and error, what you can do to make your periods better, what could potentially be making it worse, and just understanding your body as a whole, and don't wait for people to tell you about yourself. Kind of go out and research and learn things about yourself and your cycle and your body.
How do you stay connected to Allah during your cycle, especially when your worship routine is changing?
I definitely keep up with my morning and evening adhkar, perhaps listen to some Quran during the day, and during prayer times, to make dua during prayer times, I guess. Just making sincere dua and just taking it day by day, second by second, because it will pass.
What practical tips have you implemented in your life to maintain your health and well-being?
Daily walks is essential, herbal teas, cutting out carbonated drinks, anti-inflammatory foods. I'd also say breathing practices is very essential, and I feel like that can help in different scenarios in life as well. Holistic products such as Epsom salts, castor oil packs.
What would you say to younger girls who are just entering puberty and their first period?
I would say, don't be afraid to ask questions. If you are in pain, make sure you tell somebody. Don't suffer in silence. That's just your body telling you that something's not right. And don't be afraid to do your own research as well, because I know back in school, they kind of give you the scientific explanation of, a menstrual cycle and things like that, but they don't kind of go in depth of what that might look like for everyone, because everyone has their own individual experience with menstrual cycles. So don't be afraid to search online, talk to your sisters, aunties, mums, and have their input and advice on what they might suggest for you as well.
And what would you say to older women? What do you wish they understood about what it's like for you?
I'd say to them to be more understanding. Just because you haven't necessarily gone through it, or some people may have not gone through, a bad menstrual cycle, be understanding of it. Everyone is different, everyone experiences things differently, and just make space for them, help them in any way you can.
If Taahirah could be a space for Muslim women's health, what would you want it to change for the next generation?
I think I'd want it to become such a huge space for young sisters, older sisters, to be able to feel comfortable in talking about their own experiences in life, how it affects them, how certain advice has changed them, and just a space for them to feel empowered and not seen as sort of a commodity or seen as there's something wrong with them, but just for them to have a community where they can talk to sisters, like-minded sisters who are experiencing the same thing, and just knowing that they're not alone in this.
How does it feel to speak about these things out loud? And what surprises you about yourself?
I think it feels liberating in a sense, because like I said, you don't really get to talk about it often, or if you do, you're kind of seen as, oh, like, poor you, like, hope you feel better. People don't really understand the situation that you're in, or how it can affect you mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. And I also would say that it feels kind of comforting in a sense, because nobody really gives you that space to talk, unless, for example, you're in a GP appointment, and things like that. Don't be afraid to take new opportunities in life. The worst thing that can happen is the opportunity doesn't work out. If you never take the opportunity, you will never know the sort of potential that you have, or the confidence, or you don't know all the gifts that can come from that opportunity. So I'd say always push yourself. If it's something new, go and take it. If it's something you're apprehensive about, still do it. Because when you constantly say no, or you feel perhaps you're not good enough, or you're not equipped in certain things, then you're always going to be placing yourself in a box, and you always look at other people and see, oh, but look at all their opportunities that they're doing or they have, and you kind of want it for yourself. So I'd say to always push yourself and never give up.
يا أيها الناس قد جاءتكم موعظة من ربكم وشفاء لما في الصدور وهدى ورحمة للمؤمنين.